Hola amigo, welcome to the India's first ever online web developers conference. We are so happy to have you join us live. I am Tushar Pal, organizer of GDG Indore and CTO of Protons of Technology. We are so excited to see all your active participation. Hope to see you great learning ahead, followed by all the sessions. I am super excited to kickstart this session on performance and developer tools, which will be help you to improve the performance of the web. Let's welcome Santosh.
Hello everyone, my name is Santosh. I'm a GD for Angular and I'm an open source contributor for projects like Angular, NGRX, and NGX Builders. Welcome to the day one of Web Dev Live India. And we have some great contents on performance and developer tools with some amazing speakers. And I'm sure you are as excited as me to listen to all the talks. So also, just to let you know, we have an AMA section after all the talks will be completed. So feel free to ask questions in the chat window, which is available on right side of your screen, and we will ask the same questions after all talks are over in our AMA session. And we yeah. Also you can see all the entire schedule, which is available on WebDev Live in .web.app. And it's time to introduce our keynote speaker of the day, who is Biswajit Malik. He's a program manager at Google. So welcome, Biswajit, and thanks for your time. So over to you, Biswajit.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Hope you are doing well. My name is Biswajit, and I work as a program manager in the developer relations team at Google. Before I begin, allow me to take a moment to talk about what's happening currently. The COVID-19 is far from over. It has caused extreme amount of panic and paranoia uh, among a lot of people, and this is affecting the entire world. And to say that we are all in this together, and I'm very sure I think the human will power to solve this will persist, and this too shall pass. Till then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay indoors as much as you can, and take care of your family. I'll also take this moment to thank everyone who is at the forefront of COVID response, all the essential care providers, doctors, healthcare professionals, police, and so on. There are a lot of people who can take the luxury of staying inside, but not a lot of people can afford that luxury outside. Speaking of working from home, this is my, I think like I have already completed 3 months inside home. It's not great. I don't like it. I don't enjoy it at all. It becomes difficult to separate your work and your, your personal life and so on. And I am very sure many of you, you are feeling the same. But it also gives an opportunity to invest the extra time if we have in learning something new and like making ourselves more capable. And I hope, I think this event is going to serve that purpose. So on behalf of the entire team, I welcome you all to this amazing 4-day online event focused entirely on web, called web.dev live India. If you are like, if it would have been like a physical event, I would have asked you to basically clap your hands. But if you are also, staying at home, you can still clap your hands. This is a follow-up event of the online event Google put together 10 days back from June 30th to July 2nd, called web.dev live. The event is over, but the recordings and everything is already shared. So you can go and watch them at web.dev/live. This event is entirely organized by a group of amazingly passionate community leaders who are also really, really interested in the field of web. So if you see people in this slide and recognize them, feel free to say hi and feel free to say thanks, because the event is going to be really amazing. They have come together and they have put together some brilliant speakers, both from India and from international stage, and across a variety of web topics. So stay tuned and hopefully you will enjoy this. Before we start, I wanted to share a couple of like ground rules for this. Uh, Even though we are not going to be sitting together in a conference, we are still here together virtually. So whatever the interactions is, and wherever you are basically meeting and talking and engaging with organizers and fellow audience, try to remember these three things. First, be nice. We are all part of the same community, so try to be someone who people will like to be around. So if yeah, be nice, be friendly, be welcoming. Second, whenever you are engaging, be respectful and constructive. You might have a different opinion and viewpoint, but always remember, don't go into personal attacks, vent or rant. Third, be a learner. Always be curious, challenge assumptions, don't take things at a face value. It's absolutely okay if you don't have share the same viewpoints, and maybe possible that someone who is speaking might be saying something wrong, which you can contradict and rectify. But do that nicely, do that constructively. And given that you are committing yourself to this 3 hours of every day for next 4 days, please honor your commitment for your own sake and own learning. If you are really curious about interesting, like learning about this, please step like put your phone aside and everything. If unless you are watching this thing on your phone, and continue to be a learner. Uh, I Let's start with the question. How many devices do you think would be there in the world? Like how many devices are connected to internet? Any, if you have any guess, feel free to add them in the YouTube comment. Um, so, so basically, many of us might have concepts like devices are not smartphones or laptops anymore. Any device which is connected to internet and can perform some activities is smart. So there are 20 billion, almost close to 20 billion devices now in 2020. And do you know which platform or which technology powers them all? It's not a surprise. It's web. 20 billion devices across 4 billion internet users globally. And web is that, and web and internet are those platforms which are keeping us together, which are keeping us connected, and which are probably helping us go through this global pandemic called COVID. And I think these devices have evolved, right? Like 5 6 years back, smartphone, and we are talking about like what is the percentage of share of search which is going to smartphone, what is the percentage of internet traffic which is going to the smartphone. That's not the conversation anymore. Now the devices concept has transformed completely. There is smartwatch, there is smart lens, there are home devices like Google Home or Alexa, there are smart TV, there is gaming, like just like controllers which are already smart, which doesn't need to be connected to anywhere. So we are entering an era where I think it's also called now surfaces. So any surfaces can be like connected and can be smart, and so on. And building for this kind of like diverse set of devices, diverse set of surfaces is an interesting challenge. It's an interesting challenge for the web developers. It's an interesting challenge for the product managers, for the visionaries of web in general. So while we are going through this interesting world, and web which has been there for like the longest serving technology, maybe probably, and like among the contemporaries, and and it is like it has a lot of legacy components, but it has also surprised everyone by increasing its capabilities, increasing its the things that it can do. So what are the things which matters the most when we think about the future of web? I have four things to talk about, and these four things sort of will be the theme for the web.dev live India as well. First, performance. And the performance is not only limited to the page speed. I think that was a conversation 3 4 years back, but it also the performance of experience. So let's say a user is browsing a website. both speed and experience are combining together and coming up as like one of the major topics to think about and to basically discuss. Second, it's not a surprise, privacy and security. Being respectful to users' privacy and keeping, I think, the entire ecosystem secure from everyone, from unwarranted threats like Spectre, is the challenge. Third, and the most important, the most exciting part is capabilities. For years, I think we have always said that hey, web can't do this, web can't do that, web apps have this limitations and things like that. But of late, I feel web apps capabilities is merging that with like native apps and services. So how we can basically bring, how we can match the experience of web apps to other surfaces is an exciting feat, and there is a tons of work which is happening in Google and in multiple other corporations. The last but one of the most important for you all, development. All of you are going to power the next future of web. So making life of web developers better with better framework and tools is going to be one of the major topics to discuss. So let me straight go into like give like a 5,000 or 500,000 feet view of what is happening in each of these things. And but this 4 days there are going to be deep dives into each of these topics. So stay tuned and understand what's happening in these worlds. First, performance. So let's see what's going on in the world of performance. The biggest update in the world of performance is something called Web Vitals, which got announced like I think like 1 month, 1.5 months back. Chrome team announced this initiative to provide like a unified guidance, metrics and tools to deliver great experience. Like 15 days later, Google search team also announced that while evaluating the page experience in order to rank and in order to serve them on the search page, they will also include core vitals as like a foundation. This initiative, while it is like it basically simplifies a lot of metrics people have been talking about, and it helps people to focus on like few things which probably matters the most. And I think this. If I have to basically give like a little bit more, Saurabh has an amazing talk today on this. So he will basically deep dive into each of these things. The core vitals, what we say right now, the three metrics which matters the most, it belongs to these three things. Like first of all, whether the page is loading. Second, when the user is basically interacting, how responsive this page is. And the third is like the visual stability, whether it is like good or not. I won't go more into this because there is an amazing talk, and I hope you tuned in and you watched that talk. Saurabh is an amazing speaker, and he will give you one of the best sessions out there. Second pillar that I was talking about, and a lot of work is happening in this, called capabilities. How can expand the capabilities of web, right? The first one I wanted to talk about is PWA. You might be surprised, okay, why Biswa is talking about PWA? It's not a new thing. It has been there for years now. And we know that at PWA basically combine that reach of web capabilities and basically which were only available to native apps. And I think it's not a lot of web developers want great PWAs to be used inside their Android applications. And I think PWAs have become so amazing that you can't even know that they are like, they're PWAs and not Android apps. I think there is like a COVID-19, one of the dashboards, I use it as a PWA in my phone. And it's amazing. You don't feel like it's a separate like browser-based thing. For a long time, I think building a PWA had like two sort of like things. Either you can use it like Android WebView or embed like a browser engine. WebView doesn't provide support for a lot of new capabilities like push notifications and so on. And using like a browser engine is like a lot of like end effort, and it creates like a bigger app size. So last year we brought some new thinking into this and called TWA, or Trusted Web Activities. It basically overcomes some of those limitations, but in order to build a TWA, you still need some sort of Android understanding, which we can't expect a web developer to have in this case. We can't expect the web developers to know Android, because I think then we want Android developers to build for web, right? So there is a new thing which is coming up called Bubble Wrap. It's a Node.js project, and it brings like a library and a CLI which a web developer can use without having understanding of Android to build PWAs which can exist inside Android devices. The second and one of the most exciting thing which is happening is called Project Fugu. I don't know how many of you know about it, but if you don't, please absolutely read about it. And if you know something about it, please feel free to add your thoughts in the comment section. The concept came like, we want you to create the highest quality web apps, okay, which can give like the best amount of reach across devices, and you should be able to use the existing functionalities or existing capabilities in the surface on the device in order to power these web apps. So that's how it's called. It came up with something called Project Fugu, which is also called like capability project. It's a cross-company effort, not only by Google. And there are like three major things which is happening here. Basically, the first one is give web developers and users more control over the experience of how to install the app and so on. Second is basically tighter integration with the operating system, so that you can basically use the operating system's ability to share things, like share a photo, share a song, or whatever. You can just like invoke system level share service. Third is like some of the new things. For example, you can use, let's say you are using a phone, you can use the contacts in order to power your web app, which is probably not possible without this. So, and I think they're building a bunch of APIs in order to power this kind of new capabilities. Dhananjay has an exciting talk about it on day 3. So basically, please stay in. And day 3 is all about PWA, TWA, and Fugu, and so on. So please stay tuned. And like, it's also not new. AMP has been there for a while, but AMP is like developing into this. Like, this is an excellent framework which is giving the developers build amazing experience, fast speed across platforms. In those platforms where content is the king, like where content, like for example, news sites and things like that, or blogs, where content is the majority of the experience, without involving like huge amount of development time. AMP empowers developers to build websites, right? So, and I think we also see the future of AMP similarly. It should be effective, it should be cost effective, it should be simple, which allows developers to just focus on their product. And like AMP takes care of everything related to performance, infrastructure, and so on and so forth. There are a lot of exciting new projects happening in the area of AMP, like Bento AMP, AMP Optimizer, etc. I don't know how many of you have noticed, but if you use WordPress to power your website, the CMS, WordPress already has a plugin which can basically publish AMP sites by default. My own blog is also powered by WordPress, and you can just like click something like, hey, publish on AMP, and it will also publish like an AMP site. The next one is stories. Who doesn't like stories, right? I mean, it started like a Snapchat thing, but now it's an integral part of like almost every sort of domain. It's there on entertainment sites, it's there on news sites, it's there on messaging, social media, and so on. So I think Google also understands that stories is going to be a huge part of the future of web. And we have shared an update on web stories, which is like going to be immersive and fast loading experience. If you want to know more, you should check out on this thing link, amp.dev/about/stories. Privacy and security, a no-brainer, a very important part of like the web development for years. And I think there are like a bunch of things happening, mostly on the cookies. Like last year, Chrome proposed like a standard where it restricts cookies to as a default to first-party context. And if the cookies has to be used for third-party context, like some other third-party platforms has to use it, it should be explicitly marked. So it sort of like has like a one line of defense. On the security side, there are also things like new concepts are coming up, like COP and COEP, which basically, one of the like Spectre was a vulnerability which prevented, which basically made sure that like let's say in one browser there is a malicious code running, which can also affect other websites and other things from a different origin. So it just empowers that site isolation in some sense, so that we can probably have some line of defense against this kind of security threats. And the last one, development. I told like web is moving into this new and exciting territories. And who is empowering this? Passionate web developers like you. All of you are behind how web is moving towards this amazing, uncharted, but exciting territory. So keeping an eye on the pain points of web developers and help solve them, and also at least empathize with them and give some sort of perspective in the short and long run is definitely one of the focuses areas. So one of the new things which is recently have done is like build tools have been some pain points, which one to select, which one not to select, and so on. So we came up with this thing called tooling.report, which basically helps you choose the right build tool for your next project. You can decide whether to migrate from one tool to another. Is it worth it, or whether you should do it at all, or whether what kind of tools you should consider, and things like that. And it basically it has a little bit of like basically compares multiple build tools. We are working together with the creators of this build tool so that they are like very fairly represented. But yeah, I think this is an amazing tool which we can use. Second, I think Web Vitals is going to be an exciting conversation for some time, and this Web Vitals will also evolve. There are like these three things, but this is also going to be evolved every year. This Web Vitals are now you can see it almost across all type of tools, be it like page speed insights, Chrome Dev tools, Chrome UX reports, and things like that. There is also an extension called Web Vitals extension. So that's there. There are some exciting updates on Chrome Dev tools. I won't go more into details because there is an exciting talk by Sam today. I think there is another talk by Dhruti after me, and after that, Sam has this amazing talk about like tooling and what's the update. There are updates on there is a new tab called Issues tab. Like there is some exciting update on the accessibility, like how you can basically developers can see how page color and contrast changes and things like that. So stay tuned and wait for the Sam's talk. And almost there is like update across all of these tools. So be it there is something called web.dev/major. There is Lighthouse, like there are updates on Lighthouse and page speed insights and things like that. So Sam's talk will cover most of this. All right, I am almost at the end of my keynote. So I'm just going to summarize again those four things. And performance, absolutely critical. We spoke about Web Vitals, such a major conversation around it. Capabilities, so many things happening here. PWA, AMP, web stories, Project Fugu. Privacy and security, how like we are empowering to make web more secure and more like basically give the privacy sort of like functionality. And lastly, how we are making lives of web developers, how everyone is making lives of web developers better with like updates on different tools. And there is this new thing called tooling.report. All right, and what better can be this amazing event, which is webdev live India. We have 26 speakers for you, span across 4 days, 4 themes across the kind of the pillars that I spoke about. And the speakers are like, I have heard some of them, I know some of them personally, and they're like simply amazing. There are speakers from Google, from companies like GoIBibo, Nika, Agraya Technology, and Oyo, and so on. So please stay tuned. I hope this will be really worth it. Just to give like a little bit of like overview, if you want to see what kind of speakers are there. Today is the theme. Today's theme is called Performance and Developer Tools. And Dhruti, Sam, Saurabh, and Sunit are going to speak. And at the end of every day, there is like a Q&A session by all of the speakers. Tomorrow, the topic or the theme is called Front End and AMP. And Hiren, Ashok, Niveta, Aman, and Stephen from Google, they are going to speak about it. At the end, there is another question and answer session. And day 3 is, I told you, PWA, TWA, and Fugu. Dhananjay, Aditi, Varsha, Arpan, Prasant, Ankit. These are amazing speakers for the day. And the last day on Sunday, it's about privacy and user experience. And we have some amazing speakers there: Johan, Ayush, Punita, Santosh, Jagriti, and there is a topic on web payments also by Dharmesh, who is like the payment GD or in India. And lastly, Google Developers India has been producing this amazing monthly sort of series about if you have any questions about any specific technology, you can ask. We have a theme for every month. You can ask about that topic, and we'll have some amazing Googlers to basically answer those things, like in a 20 minutes video. So if you are so last 2 months topic has been Kotlin and Android, and this month's topic is web. So if you have any questions about web, this is your chance to get answered, along with web.dev live India. So you can submit this form, goo.gle/ask Google Devs India -web, and the last deadline is I think 12th of July. So yeah, I think maybe if you ask, you will see your answers by the end of this month on a YouTube video. That's about it. Thank you so much, and have a great learning experience with this event. All the best, folks, and stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you.
So thanks, Biswa. It was like a good session about the web statics. Introducing our first speaker, we have Dhruti with us, and Dhruti is senior software engineer at Tatvasoft. If you guys want to explore more about JavaScript, primary but productive concept, then this session is for you. So welcome Dhruti to the WebDev Live India. Hi Dhruti, over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Hope you all are safe and healthy. I'm honored that I get a chance to interact with this amazing audience. And most importantly, I'm glad that I get the opportunity to share my knowledge with this type of enthusiastic audience. So before starting, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Dhruti Joshi from Ahmedabad, and I'm a senior software engineer with having an experience of more than half a decade. I'm managing Women Tech Makers chapter from Gandhinagar and also working as a co-organizer of GDG Gandhinagar as well. So now, without wasting more time, let's start our session, and it is about JavaScript. I will explain some concepts which are very primary, but it's very productive in our routine development. So before dive straight to the concepts, we must know what is JavaScript and why it is. So basically, JavaScript is a scripting or programming language that allows you to implement complex features on web pages. It is lightweighted and interpreted programming language. It is designed for creating network-centric applications. It is complementary to and integrated with Java. It is an open source and cross-platform scripting language. So, JavaScript is the world's most misunderstood programming language. And it is because of all of us feel like we all know JavaScript because we are taking it very lightly, and somewhere we have thoughts in our mind that JavaScript don't have that much concepts. But in real, it's more powerful than what we are thinking, and it's much more complex as well. So what does JavaScript do? So with JavaScript, we can validate user input before sending the page off to the server. This saves server traffic, which means less load on your server. We don't have to wait for a page reload to see if we have forgotten to enter something. We can even create interfaces that react when user hovers over the mouse or activates them via the keyboard. We can use JavaScript to include such items as drag and drop components and sliders to give a rich interface to our site visitors. So now let's move on to the first concepts of this session, and it is JSON.stringify. First, what is the full form of JSON? Anyone have any idea? It's JavaScript Object Notation. It's an open standard file format and data interchange format that uses human readable text to store and transmit data objects consisting of attribute value pairs and array data types or any other serializable values. The JSON.stringify method converts a JavaScript object or value to a JSON string. We can use JSON.stringify in many ways, like we can stringify the JavaScript object, we can stringify arrays, we can also stringify dates, functions, and even undefined and null as well. So let's see one by one. First, we will see how we can stringify JavaScript object. So here you can see in the first code snippet that I have created one object and it has three properties with the values. And in console.log, I have used JSON.stringify with the parameter, and that is the obj in our case. And if we run this JS file, we will get the output exactly like snippet image 2. And you can see the value with the number data type remains same. Now let's see how we can stringify array. So here you can see I have created one array in the first code snippet with the three values, and in console.log I have used JSON.stringify with the parameter of the array that we have created. And we will get the output that you will see in the second code snippet. Okay, now let's see how we can stringify the date objects. So here you can see that I have created one new object with the three properties, and one of that is the type of date. Okay, and in console.log I have used JSON.stringify with the parameter which is our obj. And we will get the below output, as you can see in the code snippet 2, and see that date object is converted to the string object. Now, next is stringify JavaScript function. I have created one object with three properties, and one of them is defined with a function. Now, if we simply print this object with the JSON.stringify, and you will get the output, and you can see will not get that property which is defined with the function. So if we want to get all the properties in our output, we need to convert that property into string first. And after that, if we print that entire object using the JSON.stringify, then we'll get the proper output. Now, you may have question that what happened when some property has undefined or null value. So here is the answer. I have created one object with the properties, and one of them has undefined value, as you can see here. So if we print this object with JSON.stringify, then we'll not get that property in the output which has undefined. Okay, and in the below example, similarly, there is one more object with the properties, and one of them has the null value. And if we print this object with JSON.stringify, then we'll get all the properties of the object with the null values as well. So these are the different ways in which we can use JSON.stringify. Now let's move on to the second point, and it's about how we can create non-enumerable property. Objects can have properties that don't show up when iterated through the particular object using object.keys or using the for loop. Those type of properties are called non-enumerable properties. By default, all the properties of the JavaScript objects are enumerable. That means we can enumerate them in a for loop or read them using the object.values method. So if we want to override the default behavior of the object, then we should use object.defineProperty method. It takes three parameters. The first one is object. The second parameter is the name of the property that we need to enumerate. And the last is property descriptor. Now let's see the example. Here I have created one object with the three properties, and I want to make the email ID property as non-enumerable. For that, we can use object.defineProperty method, which takes three arguments as I have explained earlier. So first one is object. So in our case, it's obj. Second parameter is the name of the property that we want to set as non-enumerable. So here I have used email ID, and the last parameter is property descriptor, and for that we have to set enumerable property to false. And if we print this object values, we will not get email ID property in the output, as you can see in this code snippet image 2. Now let's move on to the next point, and it is about NaN. The NaN property represents not a number value. This property indicates that a value is not a legal number. Since NaN always compares unequal to any number, including NaN, it is usually used to indicate an error condition for a function that should return a valid number. We cannot use equality operators to check for NaN, as NaN is special in that it doesn't have a real value. So comparing it to itself doesn't have a real value. Essentially, NaN is equal to nothing, not even NaN. And that's why JavaScript provides functions like isNaN to check for NaN. IsNaN method determines whether a value is NaN. This method returns true if the value is of the type of number and equates to NaN. IsNaN function does not convert the value to a number and will not return true for any value that is not of the type of number. Now, next point is type of undeclared variable. Have you ever thought what is type of undeclared variable? The first thing that might come to your mind is, how can we have a type of the variable which is not declared? So yes, in JavaScript it is possible. So to understand this point, we must have a knowledge of primary data types that we are having in JavaScript. So here are the 7 built-in data types that JavaScript has: null, undefined, number, string, boolean, object, and symbol. Now each variable with assigned value has a type. So here you can see that I have created multiple variables with the values. In the first case, I have assigned the number value to the variable and try to print that with the type of function, and will get the output as a number, as the value is the type of number. In the second case, I have assigned the string value to the variable, and if I print this value using the type of function, will get the string, as it is the string type value. In the third scenario, I have assigned the value with the date object, and if we print this with the type of, we'll get the output as an object. In the fourth case, I have assigned the true value to the variable, and if we print this with the type of, we'll get the boolean. And in the next, I haven't assigned any value to this variable. And if we try to print this with the type of, then we'll get the undefined. And in the last, I have assigned the null value to the variable, and if I print this with the type of, we'll get the object. So basically, the variable which is not assigned with any value has undefined type. Now, next topic is undefined and null. This is very common, so we must have a knowledge that what is the difference between undefined and null. So for the undefined, it's created runtime and assigned as missing value. While same for the null, it's an object and represents intentional absence of a value. Type of undefined is undefined and type of null is object, as I have explained in the previous example. So in strict mode comparison, undefined and null are not same. However, but in type converting equality conversion, undefined and null are same. So you might get confused with what is strict mode comparison and what is type converting equality comparison. So if we use triple equal to, it means it's a strict mode comparison. And if we use double equal to, that it means type converting equality comparison. Now, here I have created one example for you to understand, in which I have explained that these are the outputs if we perform some arithmetic or comparison operators with the undefined value. And we can see that if we perform any arithmetic operation with the undefined value, then we'll get the output as NaN, that is not a number. And if we perform any comparison operator over here, then we'll get the false output. And similarly for null, I have created the example with the arithmetic operations and comparison operations. So if we perform any arithmetic operations with the null value, then we'll get the value, then we'll get the original value. And if we perform the comparison operators, then we'll get the false. Now, the next point is object.methods. So here we have a list of methods that are available. Let's see one by one. So first is object.create method. This method is used to create a new object. So in this example, I have created one object with the property, and I am creating one new object using the object.create method, and I'm passing the original object as an argument. And if we print these objects using the console.log, then we'll get the below output, as you can see in the image 2. Next is object.keys. So object.keys creates an array containing the keys of an object. It is also useful to check the length of an object. So here I have created one object with the 3 properties. So if we print the output with the object.keys and pass the object as an argument, then we'll get the name of the properties in the output. And if we print the output as an object.keys.length, then we'll get the length of then we get the count of the properties. Now next is object.values. It creates an array containing the values of an object. So here I have created one object with the properties, and if we print the output using the object.values method and passing the object as an argument, then we'll get the values of the object in the output, as you can see in the snippet. Now next one is object.assign. Object.assign is used to copy values from one object to another. We can create two objects and merge them using the object.assign method. It is also possible to use the spread operator to accomplish the same task. So here I have created two different objects with the different properties. And I'm trying to merge these two objects using the object.assign method and using the spread operator. So in first case, I have used the object.assign method with the parameters of our objects that we need to merge. And in the second case, I have used the spread operator, and in both the case, we'll get the same output. Now, the next point is object.entries. This method creates a nested array of the key value pairs of an object. So here you can see, here we have one object, and if we print this object using the object.entries method, then we'll get the nested array in our output, as you can see here. Now, next one is object.freeze. It prevents modification to properties and values of an object and prevents properties from being added or removed from an object. So in this example, I have created one object with the two properties, and I have used the object.freeze method and created the new object. And after that, I am trying to update the value of the password property. And again, I've tried to add new property as well. Now if we print this this new object using the console.log, then we'll get the below output. That means we tried to overwrite the password, but the password property remained the same. We also tried to add a new property that is active, but it is not added. Now next is object.seal. This prevents new properties from being added to an object, but allows the modification of the existing properties. So here I have created one object, and I've used the object.seal method and created the new object. And then I've tried to update the password property, and then I've also tried to create the new property as well. Now, if we print this object using the console.log, then we'll get this output. That means the new active property was not added to the sealed object, but the password property was successfully changed. Now, the last point is how to create the constants in the JavaScript. So basically, what is constant? So it is immutable variable which value can't be changed. To create the constants, we can use object.defined property method that I have explained previously to create the non-enumerable property. So this is the example for creating the constant. So here I have created one object and I'm using the object.defined property with the three parameters. The first one is the object. The next one is the name of the property that we need to make it constant. And the last one is a property descriptor in which I have set enumerable as true and writable as false. And then I have tried to update the value of the email ID property. And now if I print this object value using the console.log, then you can see the value remain the same. That means it's a constant. So lastly, I would like to share my most favorite slogan for the JavaScript. It's a style in HTML, fashion in CSS, and attitude is JavaScript. Assume your favorite actor or actress in your mind wearing gorgeous designer clothes according to the latest fashion, but does he or she looks more handsome or beautiful if he or she hasn't carried the attitude? No, right? That means attitude is like a price tag. It shows how valuable it is. So, thank you for hearing me. I hope you find this session useful. If you have any questions, you can ask that in the comment box and I will try to give answers of them in Q&A session. You can also find me on Twitter as well. Thank you once again. Bye-bye.
That was a great talk, Dhruti. I'm sure those concepts are really important if you are a JavaScript developer, and it will help a lot of developers who are watching us live. Time to introduce our next speaker for the day, who is Sam Dutton. Sam is a developer advocate for Google, and he'll be talking about my favorite topic, which is developer tools, and he'll be also introducing us to the web performance. So over to you, Sam.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just realized I was muted. Okay, so anyway, starting again. It's just great to have so many of you online. I just wish I could be in India in real life, but this will have to do. Anyway, the past few months have been unprecedented for all of us, from being in complete lockdown and working from home to facing some truly challenging times. We've all been through these months in our own unique ways. Working from home all the time myself, I've got to know our cats pretty well, and between us we've done a lot of jigsaws. Anyway, but thanks to technology, we're still able to come together as a community and do our work. And thanks to our Google Developer Group partners, I'm just so happy to be here today with all of you to present some of the latest updates to the web that we shared at our global event, web.dev Live. Now, when coronavirus first became global, we felt the need to stabilize, and this resulted in us pausing Chrome releases and temporarily rolling back the same site cookie changes. We wanted to give developers the time to focus their energy on keeping their sites healthy. And to help with that, we built web.dev/COVID-19, dedicated to best practices that we felt developers could follow in times of traffic surge and network issues, as well as the many other challenges in moving to an online-only model really quickly. So there's actually a lot of great advice on that page for any site at any time. I really recommend taking a look. That's web.dev/COVID-19. And it was really heartening to see the entire community stepping up to help, from providing critical information to users about the pandemic in the United States, to stepping up right across the world. It's really great to see these developers and many others focusing on accessibility, resilience, and performance in these times. Now, to help with this, we've made some announcements over the past few months that we'd like to share with you. So let's begin with Web Vitals. This is an initiative by Google to help business owners, marketers, and developers identify opportunities to improve user experiences. The initiative is designed to simplify performance measurement and help you focus on the metrics that matter most, the core Web Vitals. Now, we believe that core Web Vitals are relevant to all web pages and every kind of site. Core Web Vitals represent the best available signals developers have today to measure the quality of experience on the web. However, we do appreciate that these signals are not perfect and the web is always changing, so future improvements or additions are likely. So the current set of 2020 metrics focuses on three aspects of the user experience: loading, interactivity, and visual stability. Now, the loading pillar relates to the interruptions the user may experience while navigating between pages. Loading metrics correlate to interruptions due to waiting that are obstacles to a good experience. Whereas the interactivity pillar focuses on distractions and errors from low responsiveness. This is critical because, delaying something that the user expects to be instantaneous often leads to problematic interactions. For example, we know from research that many users click buttons multiple times, if they don't get immediate feedback. And that's a huge problem, like for an add to cart button or whatever. And finally, the visual stability pillar focuses on the stability of components while the page loads and renders and becomes interactive. Now, we found that page components moving around during page load was a major problem for many users. So for 2020, there are 3 metrics that correspond to the 3 pillars of Core Web Vitals. These are LCP, FID, and real users, so they reflect real-world user experience, and not just from your computer on your desk in your office. Full Paint, or LCP, measures loading performance. Now, for a good user experience, LCP should occur within 2.5 seconds of when the page first starts loading. First input delay, or FID, measures interactivity and should be less than 100 milliseconds. Cumulative layout shift, or CLS, is a measure calculated for visual stability, and it should be less than 0.1. Now, we suggest measuring these metrics on the 75th percentile to make sure you're achieving these targets for most of your users across mobile and desktop devices. In other words, at least 75% of your page views should get a good score for each metric. So let's go into a bit more detail on all these metrics. Largest contentful paint, or LCP, measures when a page-to-page navigation appears complete to a user. Now, previously, we used first contentful paint and other indicators, but in testing, we found that LCP is the most impactful to users. Now, as the name suggests, LCP reports the render time of the largest content element visible within the viewport. It considers images, videos, elements, and so on, text. And bear in mind that a single page may have multiple LCP targets, but the last one occurring should be considered the LCP score indicator, or as we call it, the related node. Now, first input delay measures the time interval between when a user first interacts with a page, for example, clicking on a link, and the time when the browser is actually able to respond to that interaction. In general, an input delay happens because the browser's main thread is busy doing something else. Another common reason is that the browser is busy parsing and executing large JavaScript files in your app. Now, you can even find an example on the chart here that explains how downloading large JavaScript files may delay the user input response because of long JavaScript tasks. Long first input delay typically occurs between the first contentful paint and time to interactive. Now, the cumulative layout shift metric measures the sum total of the individual layout shift scores for every unexpected layout shift that occurs during the entire lifespan of the page. A layout shift occurs anytime a visible element changes its start position in the viewport between 2 frames. The layout shift score is a product of 2 measures of that movement, the impact fraction and the distance fraction. Impact fraction measures how unstable elements impact the viewport area between 2 frames. Distance fraction measures the distance that unstable elements have moved relative to the viewport. You can learn more about the JavaScript APIs behind each of the Core Web Vitals and what kinds of studies we put in place in order to define the threshold. Okay, so you may be wondering, well, what's the impact of all this? Well, we did research on millions of page impressions. We found that if a site meets the Web Vitals thresholds, users are 24% less likely to abandon the page before the first content is painted. Just to repeat, following the Web Vitals guidelines can lead to a 24% reduction in page abandonment, which is pretty amazing. So the same metrics are also planned to be included in the new page experience search ranking, among other signals, in order to provide a holistic picture of the quality of the user's experience on a web page. Now, timing is still in discussion, so there's no immediate action required. We're planning to provide at least 6 months notice before the changes roll out. You can find out more about this on the Webmaster Central blog. So, what's next for tooling? Well, all Google's popular tools for web developers now support Web Vitals. And as mentioned, I think before, we've also added a Chrome extension to allow anyone to track core Web Vitals from any web page. And finally, we've launched a JavaScript library for you to be able to integrate the Web Vitals in your development processes quickly and easily. Web Vitals is it's like 1K modular library that makes it really simple to record and report Web Vitals metrics. Here's a slightly longer example that shows you how to use Web Vitals to record metrics and report them back to your analytics backend. So what should you do first? Well, 2 things. Step 1, go to PageSpeed Insights if you haven't been there already, and this will give you your Web Vitals metrics for your site, both in the field and in the lab. From the Crux data set, you'll be able to see whether or not 75% of your loads are hitting the core Web Vitals thresholds for each metric in the field, for both your page and your origin. And then you can take a look at your lab data from Lighthouse to see whether or not you're hitting the core Web Vitals thresholds for each metric in a synthetic testing environment. And this helps you to guide you towards actionable opportunities to improve your page's performance. Step 2, check out the talks that we've shared for web.dev live. These can help you learn much more depth about tools and techniques to measure and optimize against core Web Vitals. So speaking of tooling, I'm really excited to be able to tell you about a new initiative, which is called Tooling Report. My colleagues at Google Chrome Labs, they're the people who built apps like Squoosh and Prox, as well as Chrome Dev Summit websites. As with any web development team, they started generally by discussing project infrastructure like hosting environment, frameworks, the build tool setup. Now, all this evolves, of course, as the project progresses. New plugins are added in order to accommodate new frameworks or techniques. Or the way we write code, has changed, so the build tools better understand what we're trying to achieve. And throughout this project, the process of this, the Google Chrome Labs team often have been finding that the tools they select end up getting in their way. And this experience led them to investigate what different build tools can and cannot do. Now, Tooling Report gives you an overview of the features supported across a selection of web build tools. They can help you choose the right build tool for your next project, decide if migrating from one tool to another is worth it, or work out how best to adopt a tool's best practice into your existing configuration and code base. Tools, have different focus areas and don't cater to all needs equally well. There's always, of course, a question of trade-offs. So with Tooling Report, we aim to show the trade-offs at play and to document how to follow best practices with any given build tool. So how can you evaluate and compare different build tools in one place? Well, the team approached this by writing test cases. For each tool, they wrote a build script to check if the tool can fulfill the test's success criteria. As an initial step, they decided to investigate Webpack v4, Rollup 2, and Parcel 2. They also tested Browserify and Gulp, since a large number of projects still use this setup. Now, for a test to pass, only publicly documented features of the tool or a plugin for the tool can be used. Of course, we worked, with the authors of the build tools to make sure that we use their tools correctly and representing them fairly. So the tool specifically focuses on how to deliver fast, responsive, and smooth user experiences, intentionally excluding tests for developer experience, in order to avoid measuring different priorities and outcomes. So the tests are grouped into categories to give you a quick sense of which tool is excelling in which category. And you can also inspect each test individually, which is where Tooling Report gets really interesting, actually. The dedicated test page shows how the build tools are scoring on a specific test. And then this also contains a long form description as to why the test is important how the test was codified and what the expected outcome is. Clicking the GitHub logo takes you to the minimal test project that has been created to determine the tool's score. Now, this way, Tooling Report not only tells you which best practices a tool can and cannot follow, but also functions as a source of documentation. Speaking of tooling, the Chrome DevTools, I'd really like to take you through just some of the fantastic updates we've had in Chrome DevTools recently. Firstly, do you get really fed up with console spam, like these browser messages that tell you all these problems, but not how to fix them? I mean, personally, this drives me nuts. Well, the Issues tab is here to help. The Issues tab is a new way for Chrome DevTools to help you find and fix problems with your website. Now, if Chrome DevTools detects any issues on your page, you'll see a warning that takes you to the Issues tab. By the way, you'll notice that for the moment, warnings that used to show up in the console still do, as well as in the Issues tab. Now, once you're in the Issues tab, you might need to click the Reload Page button, since DevTools can't collect requests while it's closed. And you'll see that the Issues tab groups issues by type. You can also see from this screenshot that issues reported in the console, such as the cookie warnings here, are really quite hard to understand. It's not clear from the console what needs to be done to fix the issues, whereas the Issues tab provides a much more structured and pragmatic approach. So you click on an item in the Issues tab to find out what's causing a problem and how to fix it. Each item has 4 components: a headline describing the issue, a description providing context and the solution, then an affected resources section that links to resources within the appropriate DevTools context, such as the network panel. And then you have links to further guidance as well. You click on a resource link to view the item, like I say, within the appropriate context within DevTools. In this example, there's a problem with cookie CK02, and you know exactly how to fix it. And you can also go the other way, right-click on an item within DevTools to show issues associated with it. Now, the initial version of the Issues tab checks for 3 types of issue: cookie problems, cross-origin embedder policy, that's co-op issues, and mixed content. Future versions will support more issue types. So let us know what you think, how we could improve the Issues tab and what features you'd like to see. File a bug report or send a tweet to Chrome DevTools. Now, we've, of course, also added Web Vitals support to DevTools. In the DevTools timeline, along with core Web Vitals metrics such as LCP, you can also see other related metrics that are meaningful and important to developers. Now, additionally, because core Web Vitals are all field metrics, we want to ensure that you can still measure and track them in lab data with tools such as Chrome DevTools. So for real user-based metrics such as FID, we've got TBT, total blocking time, as a lab equivalent that can be used to track and diagnose your real user performance of first input delay. Now, in this example, there's a page with long tasks that mean that they're taking more than 50 milliseconds for the browser to make the content interactive. So what we do here to show this is candy striping on the task, and like you can see a red triangle at the top right corner. The candy striping kicks in at 50 milliseconds, so everything on its right is basically the time spent over and above the threshold. So the total blocking time can be thought of as the amount of candy striping that you have in recording for your task. We've also integrated layout shift, which shows visual stability. Chrome DevTools gives details for page components with problems and highlights areas of the page that moved. And finally, if you want to get a live view of layout shifting, you can go to the rendering tab in Chrome DevTools and click on layout shift regions to check it. Now, we've also added WebAssembly debugging to Chrome DevTools, but do be aware that this is still experimental. It's still amazing though. If you're writing your code in C or Rust, you want to debug your code just like you do with standard JavaScript. That's something we now support. So you can now include a breakpoint in your C code that you've compiled to WebAssembly. And you can also see the callback stack there that allows you to see the calls that are going from the JavaScript into the C and so on. I mean, to me, this is just fantastic, amazing, beautiful engineering. I also had incorporated something, we looked at color vision deficiency emulation that helps developers see how a page's colors and contrast changes with various vision deficiencies. Now, vision deficiencies aren't an on-off thing. They're a spectrum where people experience everything from a mild deficiency to something very acute. So we've implemented the most acute form of each deficiency listed. The theory being that if you optimize for the most acute case, everything up to that will also be included. Okay, so I've covered the Chrome DevTools, but what about Lighthouse? Well, as you may know, Lighthouse just announced version 6, which has new metrics, including web vitals, new audits, and a new performance score. So let's start with the updates to the perf score. Now, on a high level, we want to make sure that you can get a sense of your loading performance, interactivity, and layout predictability. The metrics and the weights of those metrics that formulate the top-level score are intended to give you a balanced view of your user experience quality against critical dimensions. Now, there's also this really nifty scoring calculator to help you explore the performance scoring. The calculator also gives you a comparison between version v5 and v6 scores. Now, when you run an audit with Lighthouse 6.0, the report comes with a link to the calculator with your results populated. Lighthouse v6 also offers quite a few new audits with a focus on JavaScript analysis and accessibility. All of the products that Lighthouse powers are updated to reflect the latest version, including Lighthouse CI, which enables you to easily measure your core web vitals on pull requests before they're merged and deployed, which is pretty amazing. Page Speed Insights, that's PSI, reports on the lab and field performance of a page on both mobile and desktop devices. The tool provides an overview, as you know, of how real-world users experience the page, powered by the Chrome UX report, and a set of actionable recommendations on how a site owner can improve page experience, which is provided by Lighthouse. Now, Page Speed Insights and the Page Speed Insights API have also been upgraded to use Lighthouse 6.0 under the hood and now support measuring core web vitals, both the lab and field sections of the report. Core web vitals are annotated with a blue ribbon that you can see here. Now, from the Crux dataset, you'll also be able to see whether or not 75% of your loads are hitting the core web vitals thresholds for each metric in the field for both your page and your origin. And then you can take a look at your lab data from Lighthouse to see whether or not you're hitting the core web vitals threshold for each metric in a synthetic testing environment. And this helps you to guide you, towards actionable opportunities to improve your page's performance. So the new Core Web Vitals report in Search Console helps you identify groups of pages across your site that require attention based on real-world field data from Crux. URL performance grouped by status, metric type, and URL group, that's groups of similar web pages. And the report is based on the 3 core Web Vitals metrics, LCP, FID, and CLS. And it's a great way to identify pages that need your attention on your site. The Chrome UX report is a public data set of real user experience on millions of websites. It measures field versions of all the core web vitals. So, even if you don't have run real user measurement on your site, Crux can provide a quick and easy way to assess your core web vitals. The newly redesigned Crux dashboard allows you to easily track an origin's performance over time, and now you can use it to monitor the distributions of all the core web vitals metrics. So to get started with the dashboard, check out our tutorial on web.dev. We've introduced a new core web vitals landing page to make it even easier to see how your site is performing at a glance. There's also a new Crux API for you to use, built from the ground up to provide developers with simple, fast, and comprehensive access to field-based user experience data. You can query for an origin or a URL and segment results by different form factors. The API updates daily and summarizes the previous 28 days worth of data, including your core web vitals performance. So we're really excited, to integrate more features over time to enable new ways to explore the data and discover insights about the state of user experiences. So web.dev is really your go-to place for guidance on web development. It now also supports the canonical page for information about Web Vitals. The web.dev measure tool allows you to measure the performance of your page over time, providing a prioritized list of guides and code labs on how to improve. Its measurement is powered by PageSpeed Insights, which has Lighthouse 6.0 under the hood, as I've said, and fully supports the core Web Vitals metrics, as you can see here. There are a slew of other amazing tools to help support you with measuring, optimizing, and monitoring your core Web Vitals. Google's official WordPress plugin SiteKit also now has Web Vitals support. With SiteKit, you get insights about how people find and use your site, how to improve and monetize your content directly in your WordPress dashboard, and how you're performing against core Web Vitals. As I mentioned before, we're seeing so many great ecosystem players and production monitoring solutions already implementing support for core Web Vitals. We're really delighted with this. So, thanks everyone for this really awesome work. Speaking of WordPress and Web Vitals, I'd just like to finish by telling you about, it's a really brilliant initiative. Again, like fantastic engineering from colleagues across the AMP team and other teams. This is called Web Stories. So this is a new, immersive, fast-loading, full-screen experience for the web. And yes, we're talking about these kinds of stories, like full-screen, portrait. But these, are not your sort of standard, walled garden stories. The biggest advantage we have with the current implementations is their ephemerality and, this ultra-low barrier to creation. But the stories format can also work beyond the ephemeral use case and can become its own pillar in the open web media landscape. And that's because they're really cheaper to make than video and more engaging than a plain ordinary text article. And really important, web stories are different to walled off stories in many important ways. Just like a regular web page, you own them, you host them, and very important, you get the money from the ads, not the platform serving the stories. Now, because stories are really a visual format, both Google Search and the Discover teams are showcasing them in these really cool ways, with indications that many more integrations are coming later this year. We think this can be a great net new traffic source for web creators. But you might ask, what's the easiest way to start creating? Well, good question. If we want the web to be able to compete with the closed platforms out there, story creation needs to be as intuitive and fast for all content creators. Now, lots of people are working on making web stories a thing, but one of the things that's most exciting here is that story creation is coming to WordPress, the most used CMS in the world. And this is in the form of a visual editor coming to you very soon. If you register at the link you see here, you'll be able to be notified as soon as the beta is out. And you'll hopefully see all the basic editing features you would expect, like smooth image and video handling, text controls, shape masking, and all that stuff. And the Google team is also working on some stuff you might not expect, like this one we call Text Magic, running in real time against images from the Unsplash API here. Toggled on, this feature makes it so that the editor always ensures text is readable, making dynamic decisions about the background, the line height, and so on. So stay tuned and read more on amp.dev/about/stories. So thank you very much for having me. And just a reminder, all the sessions that I've mentioned from web.dev live are now available online. So I really hope to actually see you in India very soon. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
So thank you, Sam. It's been a wonderful talk. Definitely that developers tools and web performance will help us a lot. So now everyone, let's get started for our next speaker. He is a roadies at Google, and we have Saurabh Rajpal, and Saurabh is a technical solution consultant for Google, and he will be talking about Web Vitals and Web Performance 2.0. Hi, Saurabh, over to you.
Hello everyone, I'm Saurabh Rajpa, a self-proclaimed web guru, not guru, guru. Remember, minions? And I'm always looking forward to meet a lot of web minions, aka web minions. So if you're one of them, let's comment "We are web minions" in the chat and welcome to everyone. A bit more about myself. I work at Google as a web ecosystem consultant. Visav is a technical trusted advisor for top websites in India to make sure web is a great place for everyone, making sure it's fast, user-friendly, and most importantly, useful for driving business for millions of companies. I consult companies on speed audits, building PWAs and or AMP, and also adopt latest web APIs like SMS receiver API, contact picker API. Well, there are plenty of them now, which is like just minimizing a lot of gap between web and app. And that's an interesting place to be in at the moment. In short, I work with the most awesome technology that I can think of, something which has survived through the years and something which will stay on, keep rocking. So before I jump into the core Web Vitals topic, let me ask you this question. Now, what you see on your screen are two types of different loads, right? So I want to ask you this, which experience would you prefer personally? So there is a pattern A and a pattern B. Both of them are taking more or less the same time, but which one would you prefer? Can you write those preferences over the chat? I quickly want to have a look. Come on, A and B, A or B. Is that a difficult choice to make? Okay, I see some people typing in A. Nice. Any more people? Wow. A, obvious. Somebody said it's obvious, A. Please don't write A, kya bolti tu? Pardon my bad jokes. I have a lot of them. B, no way. Okay. Cool. So good to see that you guys are writing A. And it's actually amazing that most of you chose A, while most often what we see in the real world is B, right? And I'm sure the ones who are writing A also would be feeling a bit guilty for building experiences which offer B, not A. So yes, A certainly is a right way to go about it amongst these two. Though it takes the same amount of time, at least the users feel that something is happening and they don't drop off, right? Because if you will take say so much of time to land something meaningful to the user, then probably they will feel that your site is not loading. However, if you capture the perception of the user that, hey, wait a minute, we are still loading, then they will hold on to your website. Well, let me be super honest here. A might irritate some of your users as well, because they'll try to interact with the loaded website, as in, as soon as they see something happening, they'll try to interact with it, but eventually won't be able to, because you are still loading, or at least major portion of your main thread is still busy working on something. And that's why you have to improve your website further to reduce the total load time as well. So I think the two main key takeaways from here is, when you do apple-to-apple comparison in such a kind of a, say, similar load experience or similar time experience, then certainly do something that maybe wrong word to use, but maybe fools the user that, okay, your site is loading faster, but eventually still continue to focus on reducing the total load time as well. Cool. And then that brings us to the Web Vitals topic. Now, it's an initiative by Google to help business owners, marketers, and developers identify opportunities to improve user experience. Now, this is very important when we talk about improving user experience. A lot of you think that just building a site or just rolling it out is enough. But let me tell you this thing, that a lot of studies have been conducted which shows that if you're not giving good user experience, and even performance is part of that, then your business is unlikely to grow as much as it could potentially have. Now with Web Vital initiative, what it's mean is like it's meant to simplify the performance metrics measurement landscape. What we mean by that is, earlier there used to be a lot of different metrics, which a lot of people used to feel it's not something which directly relates to the user experience. My site still gives good experience, or my site is probably behaving in a different way than what is reflected on the performance metrics. But with Web Vitals, it helps the site focus on the metrics that matters the most, and hence we call them the core Web Vitals. We believe that core Web Vitals are relevant to all web pages and every kind of website, be it your publisher, be it your e-com, be it travel, or any kind of site that you can think of. Each one of them, it's super important. Now, if some of you remember, and I think Sam also briefly touched base upon AMP as a framework, he talked about stories. But if you talk about AMP, it's a great framework which delivers a lot of good core Web Vital areas. It captures, and that's where it has helped a lot of publishers to already be like core Web Vital compliant without even thinking about implementing some of the things. But anyway, I'll not go into that space, but I'll say that using that like inspired from AMP, these core Web Vitals now is something that we are pushing for everyone to achieve, irrespective whether they want to use AMP or not. Now, Core Web Vital represent the best available signals developers have today to measure the quality of experience of the web. But we do appreciate that these signals are not perfect, and therefore future improvements or additions will come. So once again, so yeah, first let's know why we need to care about it. Like I know there would be a lot of talks who would briefly touch base upon Core Web Vitals. Even Sam explained few things a bit in detail so that you could understand how you could use, or what's that meaningful, if you could make meaningful usage from the developer tools. But first of all, as a developer, why should you really care about it? Now, improvements in mobile site speed can positively affect a brand's bottom line. Like if you have a brand, and if you are not like delivering a bad site experience, it can negatively affect your brand experience too. So a recent study from Deloitte Digital found that a site speed improvement of just 0.1 second leads to an increase in conversion rates and average order value. I hope you are understanding what I mean by conversion rates and average order value. When I say conversion rates, I mean to say that the potential uplift in the chances that a user would actually convert or achieve your target, which is like say add to cart or making a purchase. And average order value means that if the site was loading faster, probably user would end up buying a bit more. And by the way, it's not a typo. It's actually what you see. 0.1 seconds can make millions. Just imagine every time you blink your eye, you're making millions. Now let's look at what can cause these incremental 0.1 second delays. As you can see, and I know this is a like most common slide used to like really share the different kind of experiences that users go through. So if this could be repetitive, but as you can see here, these experiences are not new, and in fact are pretty consistent across many websites, even out today. That's the sad part. So the current set of 2020 metrics that which are called core web metrics, these focuses on three aspects of user experience. First, loading. Second, interactivity. And third, visual stability. All these three are super important for having or serving a very good user experience. So the loading aspect relates to the interruptions the user may experience while navigating between multiple pages. So it's not only about the first load which is happening, it also about the navigation between multiple pages within your website. For example, if you have a purchase journey where a user is browsing some hotels and then clicking on a hotel, the hotel detail page come, then you go for the booking. So all these like pages individually in the journey, if you are like if the user experiences loading issues, it all causes those interruptions. So discrete metrics such as loading ones correlates to interruptions due to waiting that are obstacles to a good user journey, as I talked about right now. Cool. So second aspect is to consider are the distractions and the errors from low responsiveness. This is critical because delaying something the user expects to be instantaneous may lead to errors. An example is add to cart button and how users may click twice on the button if they feel it does not respond to their input. How many times have we done that? I think a lot of times this happens. I hope you realize it in time and don't order multiple things in one go, of course. Also, finally, the visual stability aspect, which measures how delightful the user experience is while the components in the page load, and the render becomes like interactive. So, in the third visual stability piece, I'm pretty sure that, and you can like smile at your end if you feel that you've ever landed onto a wrong website or a wrong, wrong link when you clicked something which was unintentional. You're trying to click something and something else happened, and it could happen because of fonts like loading later, or your ad slots actually inserting few things on the later on in the when the website is loading. So again, just to briefly touch base on, because this topic is about core web vitals. So these are the 2020 core web vital metrics that you're seeing here, and these are included in the W3C and WSEG specs as well. These focus on three major aspects, as mentioned before, which are like LCP, FID, and CLS. They're all measurable in the field. What I mean by that is, like, actual users, how they are experiencing your website is actually captured by all of these matrices. So that's why we say they're all measurable in the field. It's not important that they are only available in the lab when you're developing the website, but even when they are out in the wild, when your users are actually using it. And this is what will best reflect the real world user experience, as I just told you. So LCP, which is also called like the full form is largest contentful paint, measures the loading performance to provide a good user experience. LCP should occur within 2.5 seconds when the page first starts loading. And that's where you will see that green portion. So if your site is loading or your largest contentful paint is being loaded within 2.5 seconds, that's when it's considered a good load experience. Second is FID, or first input delay. It measures the interactivity and should be less than 100 milliseconds. Now, what we mean by this is, if a user is clicking on something and your website is not able to respond back to the user action within 100 milliseconds, it's a bad user experience. And the last one is CLS, or the cumulative layout shift, which measures the visual stability, and it should be less than 0.1. Now you can understand how critical you should be about the jumping content, because anything beyond 0.1 is considered a very bad user experience. So we suggest measuring these matrices on the 75th percentile, I think, as Sam also told you, because you have to make sure that you're hitting this target for most of your users. And that's why when you look at the real user metrics, which talks about how many percentage of users are lying in that green bucket, you should be targeting that most of your users, say 90%, 99% of users are receiving things faster. Now, some of you might be thinking, if I am having a good lab data or like good lab number, for example, I have a lighthouse score of 90 plus, why should I really bother about real user metrics? Why it can't still, won't it be automatically good? See, the answer is it can be yes and no both. Yes, for the ones who have really like advanced users. Now, by advanced users, I mean the tier 1 city users, for example, Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore. If your users are coming mostly from these areas, where the probability is that they would be having good internet connection, which would be lying 4G and above, and if they're coming from good handsets with really good GB of like RAM, then of course those users in real world would be able to load your website faster. Now, compare this with some website which whose main target or users are coming from tier 2, tier 3 cities who are on really low bandwidth. Now, on that piece, it could happen that you could still have lab numbers as high as 90 or something, but you still might be getting real field performance numbers in sub 50 like region. And if you're thinking that if that's the kind of difference that one can observe, why do we really still need to bother about lighthouse score for that matter? Now, quick answer to that is that till the time you ship your website onto into the field, you won't be able to realize whether you have built a good website or not. And that's where measuring something with lighthouse would be super duper important to ensure that whatever you have built is at least achieving good target number based on the general averages of metrics that Lighthouse uses. So they have kept some thresholds within which if you lie, you get a good scores. But this is a weighted average of all the websites in the world. And as I mentioned, there could be two websites which could have totally different users and their experiences could vary. And on that note, one should understand that while Lighthouse is giving them good score on their current implementation, if they're talking about real user metrics, they should understand that my user base is coming from a very low net infrastructure background, and I should rather ship things which are even lesser in weight. So for example, if I'm an e-com player, I could, rather than giving those fancy carousels on top of the website, I could rather just give, like, say, top 10 items that I think that would have high chances of being clicked and bought eventually. So that's the kind of experience you should uh, like care about and look at the real field data. Now, very quickly, is just to make you understand that we gave you experience of 3 different types of bad UX, and we also explained you about the 3 different types of metric which are super important under the core web vital. So this is just a mapping to make sure you understand the 3 metrics using the previous example that we used a couple of slides back. So you can find here some useful information on all these metrics, how they could be measured on web as well, what kind of studies have been put in by a lot of teams at Google so that these thresholds are defined. So I was telling you, right, like in order to achieve LCP, you should, your website or largest contentful paint should happen within 2.5 seconds. So I think everything you want to know about how these thresholds were defined is captured in some of these links. These are great reads. I'll reiterate and urge you to go and read about these using this. So if you're on a mobile phone, just quickly grab a snapshot or just click the photograph if you're attending it over the desktop. Cool. So let's go a bit in detail about all these metrics. So largest contentful paint measures when a page-to-page navigation appears to complete for a user. So we previously had FCP, which is like first contentful paint, and we had some more indicators, but eventually found that LCP is the most impactful metric for the users. As the name suggests, LCP reports the render time of the largest content which is visible within the viewport. It considers images, videos, elements with background image, and block level elements containing text notes or other inline level text elements. This is super critical to understand because as you would see in one of the experiences or in the second one, or in the first example that is on the top, you would see that the LCP is happening towards the end when the image is loaded. Now just imagine if I knew about this, that my LCP is happening after that image is loaded. I could have prioritized that image over the rest of the things which were loaded, which would give me a boost in my performance numbers. And also it would be a good user experience in return, for example, which will tell your user that, okay, this website loads really fast. So small tweaks like that, by understanding when LCP is happening, would really make your day. Anyway, I think one of the things that I really want to also tell you is that there could be multiple LCPs happening for the same website, and that is a bit more tricky situation to be in, and in fact a bad implementation, as that means that you loaded something quickly, and that's where LCP was calculated, and then you repainted the web page with some newer content, eventually making the user experience even worse. So if you're seeing those like kind of multiple LCP areas, make sure that you don't repaint, you avoid those pitfalls. Coming to the FID. So FID measures when a user first interacts and also gets a response back from the browser. So in general, an input delay happens because browser's main thread is busy. So as you would know, and this is something which is not relevant mostly today, but okay, so think of it this way, that browser's main thread is doing a lot of things. You are downloading JS, you're downloading fonts, you're downloading CSS, all those things are being processed, and your main browser main thread is busy. Now, all these things lead to these delays. And these, even when you chunk your JavaScript file, like for example, if you're building a React website, you want to use bundling, you want to chunk JS. If those individual JS are taking more than 50 milliseconds for evaluation, then it all adds to the something like a total blocking time, which eventually is something which is reflective of your FID. Because total blocking time is something which you can measure only in lab, but FID is something which you can measure in real world. So that's why if you are building a website, you should be aware that my total blocking time should be lesser, so that in real world, my first input delay and things like that is minimal. Then CLS, which is cumulative layout shift, and I already gave you the experience idea about what exactly happens, like add loads or something like that happens. So this is how this is calculated. And in fact, one of the important things to understand here is that the calculation for this is multifold. It depends on two factors. One, how much it shifted, and like which all portions shifted, and how much of each one of them shifted. So just imagine if you are having a big block which is being dragged down because of something new inserted, it will have high CLS numbers, which would impact your performance negatively. So on top of the core web vitals, there are other metrics that are proxy that are used as a proxy or supplemental to common web vitals, which will help you diagnose performance issues. For example, something like a time to first byte, which is what is that first byte load time when you first request your website from your server. That can really impact your LCP as well, because imagine if your time to first byte itself is taking 2 seconds, then LCP of course would take its own sweet time plus 2 seconds that TTFB took. Similarly, if your FCP, which is first content with paint, hasn't happened, LCP would would be deferred as well. So you really need to, for improving LCP, you have to focus on these areas as well. Similarly, like if you talk about total blocking time that I talked just a while back, and also time to interactive, which used to be some of the metrics earlier. Some of you who are already aware of the performance metrics, you would know that how important time to interactive was before Common Web Vitals was introduced. I won't say it's not still important. It still holds 25% weightage to your lighthouse scores, but these are lab metrics, right? It's not available in the real world. So in order to understand first input delay, you need to understand TBT and TTI in the lab itself, so that you optimize accordingly and then ship your website. Now some of you are thinking, what's the impact? And there are like Google has done considered a lot of resources on like millions of page impressions, and they found that if a site meets these thresholds, users are 24% less likely to abandon the page load by leaving while the page is still being loaded. So these are the kind of users that we call ghost users, because normally businesses don't even get to know which these users were, who could potentially would have landed onto the website but eventually didn't, and they just left off even before you could load a simple JavaScript like, say, activating GA, which could figure out how many users landed and how many dropped off. So these ghost users, you like 24% of the users you could actually avoid from being dropped off even before you know it. So one of the other thing which why this should really matter to you is, we all know how important search is. Like not every website is super famous, not every business is super famous that people would directly land onto it, and that's where I think people still search for a lot of relevant content and then eventually land onto your website. So these metrics are planned to be included in the new page experience search ranking, amongst other signals, which provide a holistic picture of quality of the user experience on that particular website. So the rollout of these signals is to be decided, and hence there is no immediate action that is required from your end. You should not worry that, okay, if I won't achieve these metrics, my ranking would be impacted. Let me show you that it's to be decided, and teams are like planning to provide at least 6 months notice in advance before the change is rolled out. And you can, of course, read more about this on the Webmaster Central blog, which is available at the bottom left corner. I've just shared the bit.ly link, bit.ly page experience. Cool. Now, just quickly jumping on to what next, what are the kind of tools? For, of course, like you understand that these are the important metrics that you should be taking care of. But important thing is, even if I want to make change, I should know what I should be changing. And that's where tooling becomes super duper important. I think Sam also shared that how many tools are already using this. But this is a snapshot of the tools or the popular Google tool for web developers, which by the end of May have been announced to support Core Web Vitals already. And even beyond this, even in the real world, some of you might be using speed curve or other types of real user metrics tools for evaluating the kind of experience your users are having. And for that, even those are now supporting Core Web Vitals, most of them, and rest of them are committed to start like reporting these numbers. Now, let me quickly walk you through some of these very useful tools and show you a flavor of how Core Web Vital metrics are captured by each one of them. So first one is, sorry, this site is not loading. But anyway, I'll just quickly tell you about what Page Speed Insights is. So first one, of course, is Page Speed Insights. Pardon for not loading, but I'll tell you about it. So it's a super cool and easy tool to use, which gives you great insights about your website from both field and lab data. Now that's where it becomes super duper important and easy to visualize how things are actually for your website. You could do a simple Google search, right? Page Speed Insights, and the tool would come up. So field data is what you measure directly while developing the website, as I told you. But how your user experience a website in real world is very important too, because your users could be coming in from low-end devices and bad network connection types, as I just told you a while back. So, there are more performance metrics which are part of this Page Speed Insights. The image could not load, but if you certainly would visit the Page Speed Insight, you would see that there are a lot more performance metrics which you would see on the screen. And you must start wondering, what are these? I sort of just told about 3 metrics. Now, how do I take care of the rest? So I won't go into details of each one to not scare you much, but I'd recommend that if you're a developer, you should understand these and know the possible impact each one of these have on the real user experience. And eventually all of these tell the final score, impact the final score that your website is getting. Now, one important thing I want to mention here is that the lab test for this particular Page Speed Insight run is done on a remote server, not on a local one from your country. And hence, the scores would be a bit lower than in reality, especially when you consider the lab aspects of it. So hence, I want to introduce you to a second tool, and most of you must be using it already, which is called Web Page Test. This tool is like great as it gives you tons of options to customize your test. If you are looking at the GIF right now, you would be seeing that you would be able to choose location of your test, which is Mumbai in this case. You would be able to select connection type, which is 3G fast by default, and you could like fluctuate that. And in order to get, so not only you would be able to get a lot many things or configure a lot different type of things. For getting the Lighthouse report also from this, you just need to go to the Chrome tab, which is a third tab, and select Capture Lighthouse report. And you would have the correct LS score as per the server location, which is Mumbai in this case, there. And then you see at top, you see that 41 score. The moment you click that, it will load the web page test run from a local server. So there are tons of other things which this tool offers, but my guidance is to keep it simple for you as per your liking. And I know developers love this tool, and I'll highly recommend to dig deeper later if and when required. You'll just simply understand how useful this tool is to understand the nitty-gritties about how performance of your website is impacted or loaded. So far, I've talked about capturing majorly lab data. I know Page Speed Insights also shows you the real user data, but so far I've focused on capturing lab data. And then that's where I want to introduce you to this tool, which can help you get the real user metrics in a very consolidated and in a historical manner, which is like it captures the data from past 28 days till the last 28 days and shows you a historical data about the different metrics. So what you see here right now in the graph is the real world LCP data for a particular website. So as I mentioned, the green section shows how many of your users receive it within 2.5 seconds and hence count towards the fast experience. Similarly, yellow one is between 2.5 and 4.5, and red one is beyond, which needs serious revisit. I'm sure if you run your website through these, you would observe that there is a bigger chunk of red which is visible, and that's why you need to improve those things. So it's very easy to build these dashboards because a lot of heavy lifting has already been done. You could simply visit this link and follow the instructions, the link which is available at the bottom left corner. What it will do, it will automatically create a dashboard for you, Google Studio One, and you could define default connectors, and you just give the URL and it will pull out the domain level data. And lastly, this is the new version of Test My Site, or Test My Site 2.0, as we all love to call it. So Test My Site is something which marketeers used to love, not developers. But now and in fact, it was an important tool for millions of visitors to help diagnose site speed, provide custom tips, and also like how to make it faster. But as I said, it wasn't very famous with developers because the numbers that used to come here earlier used to be focused on some metrics, like say FCP or something, which wasn't giving a holistic picture about the entire side load experience. Now, good point is today the tool is updated to provide specific recommendations on how the websites can improve their mobile site, even beyond speed, and how they can deliver more personalized and seamless experiences. So key updates to this include three things. First, it's already aligned with speed metrics for Core Web Vitals, which is LCP, FID, and CLS, which I have been sharing all this while. Second, it has customized tips on how to make the site experience fast, seamless, and personal. Third, it gives you an option to download a customized report with insights, case studies, and new developer section, which tells you about the important resources that you can refer to. To use this, you can again visit this link that is available at the bottom left corner and test out your own URL. Now, don't forget to read the tips which are shared while test is being run. That is to ensure that it's super engaging and useful at the same time. Finally, there is also a JS library which has been for everyone, which would be able to integrate the web vitals into your development process quickly and easily without you needing to update or going through a lot of different updates. As mentioned before, there is also a Chrome extension which would allow anyone to track core web vitals of any page. And I think this is what Sam also covered a while back. But I think if you really adopt this library, this JS library, it's production ready right now. You can track vitals with this and examine the implementation. If you want to really examine the implementation closely, there are a lot of subtle things to get right. Now, an important thing is you would be asking, you have shown us what vitals is and you're giving us palette of tools to choose from, but tell us what should we do first. So I just said two things. First is, if you are already having a website, which I'm assuming you would be having, you go to PageSpeed Insights. That will give you a pulse of your core web vital performance in both field and the lab. Now, I know I've told you that for the lab, there are better tools, in the sense, better in the way because they will be able to run those lab tests locally. So still go to this. It will give you a good sense of how your users are actually experiencing the website. And then from the Crux data set that you'll see here, you'll be able to see whether or not 75% of your loads are hitting the core web vitals. Like if your site is loaded by 100 users, whether 75% of your users are really able to meet the core web vital threshold for each metric in the field, or both for your page and for your origin. Basically, this gives you data for both origin level and page level. So think of it this way: if you have example.com/saurabh/abc, it will give me the data for that particular page as well, and then it will also give me the data for the origin, which was example.com. And then you can, of course, take a look at your lab data from Lighthouse to see whether or not you're hitting the core web vital threshold for each metric in a synthetic testing environment. This helps you guide towards actionable opportunities to improve your page performance immediately while you're developing. Don't need to wait for, say, capturing the real user metrics. And step two is, of course, like learn more about it, go through the talks which are happening. WebDev Live has recently come to an end just a week back, but all the great talks by these great developer advocates is available. They have gone or covered these topics in depth about talking about how do you use these tools, how do you correct these things. They have used relevant examples. For example, I remember Addy's talk talks about how Chloe, actually one of the e-com websites, improved their or achieved core web vitals by making certain changes, and those changes, if you replicate, you will be able to achieve that as well. And Lastly, I wanted to again reiterate what Viswa shared a while back. There is the Google Devs India is running this initiative of Ask Me Anything session, Ask Google Devs India Anything. And this month, since we're doing the web dev live sessions, this month's focus is on web, and that's where if you are interested in asking about a lot of questions around, say, PWA or performance and web vitals, which you just saw, or even about Angular, you can ask these questions and submit your questions here, and relevant folks would be able to record those and share that over YouTube with you for your later reference. So make sure that you save this URL and ask us questions. And that's where it's end of my presentation. I'd love, if you love the presentation, if you could make a even like say 20% sense out of it. I think that's a great start. I know a lot of people who are starting early, they would be struggling to understand why their website loads slowly, and this is there is a plethora of knowledge which one needs to attain in order to be optimal in web in achieving good scores. But I want to sincerely thank you for like taking out time. And if you really like the talk, tag about it, talk about it, share this with others. Make sure you use We Are Web Indians, and because we have to feel positive about web, which has survived so many years and will continue to survive because it's so important. It's the only platform which reaches so many different users. Many technologies will come and go, web won't. So that's it. If you have any questions, feel free to share that over the comment section. I'll join you guys back during the AMA session, which is going to happen roughly after 30 minutes from now. And also, if you feel there were some questions which are not picked up, you can reach out to me, ask me that over the handle that is mentioned here, which is I am Saurav Rajpal. And by no means I want to tell you that I am Saurav Rajpal was more because I am self-obsessed. It was because it was not available across all the platforms. And I am in that is not I am Saurav Rajpal. It's more about instant message me. Okay, cool. Thanks from your group, and thanks for being a sincere web Indian. Oh, back to the organizing team. Thank you.
That was Thank you, Saurabh. That was like great insights into the web vitals, and that reminds me that I still have a website which I launched a few days ago, and the I think I have to go ahead and optimize that website as well, because the ratings are like pretty. The largest contentful page would be, I think, really huge because of the because it is not optimized yet. So see you again for the AMA session. And meanwhile, just to reiterate, in case you have any questions for our speakers, you can ask the question on the chat window, which is available on the left side of your web page. And the next talk is from Sunit Jindal. So Sunit is going to talk about, Sunit is actually principal engineer at Nika, and he's going to talk about a very important topic, the mobile website. So he'll be sharing his journey, how Nika created a high performance mobile site. So let's welcome Sunit. So over to you, Sunit.
Hey guys, this is Sunit Jindal. I am part of Nika's engineering team, and today I am here to present our journey of making a performance site. Our journey started in the year 2019 in the month of April. At that time, our site was pretty slow. There were many factors which were making it so slow. Like Saurabh's talk was bang on. It explained every issue we had. His presentation of option A and B correctly presented our state. Our site wasn't rendering content soon enough, neither it was interactive. One of the major issues that was making this site slow was our two large JavaScript bundles, which amounted to 709 KB. If you uncompress that data, that's almost 3.5 MB. Every week, we kept on increasing some fixes to improve our FCP, SMP, and various other data. After a few months, we were able to achieve a score of 36. This is a score that we achieved after almost 4 months. There were many issues that we faced while making these improvements. After reaching a score of 36, we realized there's something that we need to do and change how we are improving the performance of our site, because the rate of improvement wasn't enough. So before re-executing or restarting this execution phase of improving performance of site, we wrote down what we learned by doing these improvements. The first one was to understand the difference between first party and third party scripts. You might be focused on your first party code, whereas your third party code might be dragging you down. So when you are improving performance of your site, pay attention to third party scripts as well. Compression. So compression is used by almost every site. But the question is, are you using the right compression level? Are you using the right compression algorithm? For example, while investigating the issues with our site, we came across multiple articles which clearly stated if you want to compress your static assets, use Brotli. Brotli gives you around 15% better compression ratio for your JavaScript and up to 20% better compression for your CSS files. Even if you are using gzip, do check what level of compression you are using. gzip provides you compression levels from 1 to 9. 6 is the default compression level that comes default enabled. I'll recommend to use at least 8. Same goes with Brotli. Brotli comes with compression levels from 1 to 11, and 1 being the least compressed and 11 being the most compressed. Effective CDN. Now, if you are not using CDN, I'll strongly recommend that you start using one. When you're shipping your content to the users, your users might be sitting across various geolocations. These edge servers help you deliver your content faster to your customers. Once we had all the information, what we learned, what we were doing wrong, we decided before we enter the execution phase, we'll write down exact goals, what we wanted to achieve. During the first phase, the major challenge that we faced was that no matter how much improvement we did, our initial render times were still pretty bad. They were always about 3 seconds. We wanted to reduce it to less than 2 seconds. Avoiding render blocking CSS or content can really improve performance, initial rendering performance of your site. So just don't focus on JavaScript. CSS is also as critical as JavaScript. Managing third-party scripts. While a lot of time third-party scripts are very important, developers do not give them enough emphasis. If you're loading your third-party scripts at the early stage, then your network can choke and even your main thread can also be choked with so many files. Using optimal bundle size and DOM nodes. In my first slide, I showed what a big bundle we were using. Never do that. Try to break your bundle into smaller chunks so that files can be loaded lazily or as per requirement on the page. Same goes for DOM nodes. If you have too many DOM nodes and the depth of DOM nodes is also high, it becomes expensive for browser to render content. If you reduce number of DOM nodes and optimize the depth, the content can be painted sooner on the page. And last but not least, we aim to achieve a score of more than 90 in Lighthouse. So this wasn't an easy target, but we said if we want to achieve something, let's go for this. Now, there was another step that we took because we already tried to improve performance of our site. We encountered many challenges. One of those challenges were how do you measure or quantify what you have done is actually impacting or making a change in terms of your user. Using one tool might not provide you enough data. Same thing was explained by Saurabh in the previous presentation. So performance monitoring can be broadly divided into two categories. One is synthetic monitoring, where you perform all your tests in a lab. You define the subject as well as the environment variables. Subject in our case is going to be a web page, whereas environment variables are going to be the CPU power or network bandwidth. So tools are same like Lighthouse, which gives you insights of whether your site is compatible with PWA, how it is, what's your score in terms of accessibility, in terms of performance. It also gives you best practices guidelines, and it is destined to hurt your feelings. The next tool is PageSpeed Insight. Again, it uses Lighthouse and also provides you field data from Chrome User Experience Report. By using this field data and comparing it with the lab data, you're able to get real picture of performance of the site. And third, but not the least, it's web-based test. Web-based tests allow you to perform tests across multiple geolocations. Even this is the greatest point about web-based test. At certain geolocations, you can perform tests on real devices. Also, you can create comparison of your various tests, which gives you a great idea of your improvements across your journey. And then comes the second category is real user monitoring. This is the data that is collected from real users. Though there are many real user monitoring tools, our favorite is SpeedCurve, which provides you many meaningful insights and help you debug a lot of issues. Other than that, SpeedCurve also provides you a facility to perform synthetic monitoring and applying budgets on your performance. But a lot of these tools are paid. If you are trying to go for a tool that is budget friendly, I'll recommend to go with Firebase. That is a tool provided by Google. It's free of cost, but there's a lag of 1 day in the data. And third, which Saurabh has already explained, you can use Crux field data. Crux field data gives you many meaningful insight, and we'll use it even today. Key gotchas. These points that I'm going to discuss, these points are what you should be extra cautious while working on performance of your site. Understand your customers. Your customers are most probably spread across multiple geolocations, will be using different devices, will be using different network service providers. Now you may ask how a user using different device would impact performance. Just think about it. An iPhone would have far higher computation power as compared to a medium range or low end device. As per network service providers, different service providers have different latencies, and those latencies vary when you travel from one city to another. Efficient loading of assets. Now, you might be able to optimize your code. You might be able to reduce your CSS. You might be able to reduce what all content you are shipping on your page. But if your network graph looks like this, there's something that needs to be fixed. Try to free up your network bandwidth. By freeing up your network bandwidth, you'll ensure that your page is interactive even on low-end and devices which have poor connection. If your network connection looks like this means you're loading your critical content first, and you have prioritized what content you are loading on the page. you can load a lot of content after a user interaction. For example, you should split your code into you split your pages into above the fold and below the fold content, and you can do with below the fold content. You can further split that section into 2 or 3 more sections depending on the need. And the results. So now I'm going to talk about the results that we were able to achieve post these migrations and considering all these key points that I discussed. The first test which we executed on our PD page was this. We were able to achieve a score of 92. If I compare this score with our previous score, we were able to reduce our time to interactivity by 72%. Again, this test was executed on fast 3G network. Our speed index was improved by 81%, our FMP and FCP were also improved by 56%, and our first CPU idle occurred 69% sooner. Now let's talk about we discussed about that our score improved, but what changed? So this is a screenshot of our network. Before making those improvements, our HTML size amounted to 182 KB uncompressed, and we were downloading 5.2 MB of data, again uncompressed. Post migration, we were able to reduce the size of our page to 102 KB. This was mainly because the amount, not just HTML that we were shipping, our stack is React based, so and we do server side rendering, so we have to send JSON as well to rehydrate our UI on the client. We optimized how much data we are sending in that JSON. Other than this, we were able to reduce the total data that was needed on the page from 5.2 MB to 2.9 MB. There's one more critical thing that I would like to tell you about this thing. If you look at the bottom left corner, their total number of requests on this page were 165. Post migration, we were able to reduce the number of requests to 58. This also helped us achieve a better performance for our users. As I told you, synthetic monitoring and real user monitoring both are critical. We did real user data collection as well. So one thing that you should observe is in our synthetic test, lab test, our first initial render was at 1.1 second, whereas in RAM data it's 0.6 second, which makes sense because at least in India, since Jio arrived, 4G adoption has skyrocketed and people are using better device than Moto G4. Now, a little comparison of our RAM data from post-migration, pre-migration. We were able to reduce our first contentful page by 64%. DOM content loaded was reduced by 84%, and page load times were reduced by 82%. Now let's discuss key factors which helped us achieve all these improvements. All those learnings, key gotchas lead to these final points. HTTP2. HTTP2 provides you multiple benefits from multiplexing, server push. There are many benefits of HTTP2, but the most commonly used, which you can use even today out of the box without doing any change, is multiplexing. Multiplexing allows downloading of multiple sources through same connection, which means downloading resources is cheaper in terms of your CPU power as well as network bandwidth, since you do not have to create new connection for every file. Lighter JavaScript libraries. So post migration, we were able to use remove 2.7 MB of JavaScript. Partially it was from third-party scripts, partially it was from our JavaScript libraries, and a lot of it was from CSS as well. For our JavaScript libraries, we chose lighter alternatives. For example, in place of React Slick, which is a great library and we have used it for years, we chose React Swipeable. So React Slick provides you many options, which were not really needed for our site. Whereas React Swipeable is a simple, unopinionated library which provides you very basic functionality upon which we created our custom carousels. We did this with many other libraries. Along with this, we also removed all third-party CSS frameworks or libraries, and we went with our own CSS. Removing those bulky CSS frameworks helped us reduce render blocking content. Optimizing front-end service. Now, if you really want to improve performance of your site, it's not just about reducing the size. It's not just about reducing JavaScript bytes or reducing CSS bytes. It's also about how soon you can deliver your content to the customers. For example, earlier we discussed about CDN. Same applies to your server. If you're rendering your content from server, which we are doing for all our main pages, and you are able to reduce even 50-60 milliseconds of time by optimizing your servers, that's a big win. For our servers, we were able to reduce 66% memory usage for these servers. And also time to first bytes were also improved. Code split. Now, not every content or every code is needed on the client browser when they first open your site. For example, if a user coming on your PD page and your reviews or your recommendations are in below the fold content, the question is, should you load that content while user just opened your page? The answer is no. Try to load critical content with which user can interact sooner and load additional data when your network bandwidth becomes free or when user interacts. For example, if user starts scrolling. Critical CSS. Again, this is one of the major factor that's going to impact your initial render time. When the browser encounters any CSS file that needs to be downloaded, browser pauses any re-rendering or repainting until that file has been downloaded, parsed, and CSS home is prepared. It might happen once CSS home is prepared, you might start downloading fonts which were not configured properly, which might further delay re-rendering on the page. To solve this problem, we used CSS in JS libraries, which provide shipping critical CSS out of the box. In our case, we used Emotion CSS. To give you some numbers, before this migration on our page, we had more than 90% of unused CSS. Post this migration, the percentage of unused CSS was just 3 to 4%, which is a big improvement. And right now we have zero render blocking calls on our web pages. Managing third-party scripts. Like, this is the third time I'm referring third-party scripts. It's not like third-party scripts are evil or something. It's just they can really bring you down. So third-party scripts are very critical for your business. Third-party scripts. Via third-party scripts, you measure performance of your site in terms of analytics. You use those scripts for remarketing, which is very critical for e-commerce businesses. So what can we do to manage these third-party scripts? Your modern day browsers come with some great APIs that you should use. Request idle callback is one of those. Request idle callback is triggered when your main thread is free, so you can choose to load your third-party script once your first-party code has been downloaded and passed. This ensures that user is able to interact with your page sooner. Other than this, browsers also provide you capability to check which connection user is currently using. If user is on a 2G network, probably you shouldn't even load third-party scripts, because if you try to load those scripts, they might not even get downloaded and the page might be unusable for a user. In case of 3G networks or 4G network, you can decide how you want to manage your third-party scripts. Performance budgets. So from starting of this presentation, we discussed that how we made our site, improve performance of our site. Now, improving performance of your site is only half your journey. Rest of the journey is maintaining it. Performance budgets ensures that any regressions that happens in terms of performance are identified at earlier stage. For example, in our case, when we released these new pages on the production, within 2 weeks, our scores went down from 90 to lower 60s. And like, we went bonkers. Like, we just fixed everything. How could this be so bad? And the issue was that one developer added an async, forgot to add async property to a third-party script. So these performance budgets would really save your life. And last but not least, we invested heavily on continuous integration. Now, any PR that comes for merging or any feature that we develop is not merged into a master until certain continuous integration checks are cleared. Those checks includes bundle sizes. After development of any feature, your bundle size shouldn't rise beyond certain size. Your lintings and even lighthouse scopes. And in the end, I would like to show you a video which again, these tests were performed on 4G network. On the left side is our new page and on the right side is our old page. So, as my closing remarks, performance optimization is not a destination; it's a journey. So, it's something that you have to keep doing, and we are still doing it. Thanks a lot.
So thank you, Sunit, for giving a wonderful talk. Like, it was really so great. Like, we have listened like lots of things that can be helpful for making our website or web is on the highly performable series. Yeah. So now next, like, not in the least, let's move to the next part and the Ask Me Anything session. So hope you all have like lots of questions till yet. So we are looking forward to answering them all. So let's welcome all the speakers to the board.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the AMA session. We have some great questions from the YouTube live chat, and let's go ahead and see the first question. So, sorry. Yep. So the first question is by Tushar, and the question is, what is the specific difference between object.create and object equals to new object? I think it would be for Dhruti. So, Dhruti, you want to go ahead and answer that question?
Yes. Thank you, Tushar, for this good question. So basically, object.create method and a new operator seems to do the same things as both create a new object and inherits a prototype. But there is one main difference is that when we create a new object using the object.create method, it will not execute the constructor code and it returns the undefined. Whereas if we create the object using the new keyword, will actually runs the constructor code and will give the proper output. So hopefully this has given you little more insight on how object.create and new operator are differentiate from each other. Thank you.
Thank you for answer, Dhruti. So let's see the next question. Tushar, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so next question is question by Ujjwal Punia, and the question is, can you add the core web vital testing extension feature in the Chrome developer tools so that we can test the website in the browser tool, then using other tools sites? That is for the same settings.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, for those who haven't seen it, there's a Chrome extension for testing core web vitals metrics. There's a really simple way to get core measurements for any page, like as you're viewing it. Chrome DevTools has support for the web vitals metrics as well. For example, you can see LCP, but of course, like additionally, because web vitals are all field metrics, you want to ensure that you can still measure and track them in lab data like you get from Chrome DevTools. So for the the user-based metrics such as FID, in that example, we've got total blocking time, TBT, as a kind of lab equivalent that can be used to track and diagnose real user performance for first input delay. And also layout shift has been integrated in DevTools. You can see that like it shows visual stability, and it gives details from the Chrome DevTools for page components that have problems, and like highlights areas of the page that move.
Thank you, Sam. So the next question is by Praveen. I think it would be for Saurabh. Are Web Vitals the updated version of RAIL model? So, Saurabh, what's RAIL model? I've never heard about it, so I just want to. I'm also even interested in this.
I think it's a very interesting question, and I'm actually amazed to see that somebody actually asked this. So Praveen, kudos to you for closely following on what are the kind of different models we keep introducing. First of all, so I think RAIL, I think it stands for response, animation, idle, and load. I think Web Vitals is I'd say it's not an upgraded version of that, but possibly an extension of that, in the sense when you talk about the like response and load part of it, what are the key important metrics in the real world. I think that's where Web Vital becomes very important in that aspect. Hope that answers your question, but Sam, like if you would like to add anything, and I'll open the floor for you also in case you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I think exactly what you just said. I mean, the Web Vital stuff really focuses on keeping it simple and on using like real user measurements, like you say. But focusing on 3 specific metrics, I think, is a really good idea, because there's so much stuff out there. People get confused, and the core aim of Web Vitals is to focus on the stuff that really matters, but also to recognize that these things change. That we have for 2020, we have the metrics that we're measuring that may not stay the same. That might change over time, and in some ways that's what we've seen with the transition from the Rail model to now talking about Web Vitals. So yeah, the web changes, and the way we measure it and respond needs to change as well.
Right. I think that's a great answer. And just to extend on top of that, just on reiterating on the fact that how we keep evolving our metrics, I think it's super important with the changing user behavior as well. Now with everything like available on the fingertips, the users' expectation are also like changing. Just a very simple example, which a lot of Indians would understand, is from stock market, for example. You used to buy stocks earlier, and you had to physically buy them, keep them with you, and then used to keep it for years because it was so difficult to sell them off. Now we don't even keep them for longer, right? Because you keep a tab on those things. So I think similar to that. Sorry to deviate, but just to make sure that you understand, it will keep evolving. And that's where I think some people also complain, hey, my score was good during LH 5.0. Now my score is bad after Web Vitals has been introduced. So I think we're not trying to be villains here. It's more to tell you that, hey, this is the real world expectation and how you should keep evolving. And I think before we move to the next question, I also want to mention on the previous question that Sam has written some amazing articles on the issues tab that he introduced during this talk. Make sure you check them out on the developers.google.com too. Cool. Back to you guys.
So next question is by Bharat Agrawal, and that is for the Sunit. Which best way to load image on the website, and by using WebP or any one other image format?
Hey, Bharat. So these algorithms also keep on evolving. If you are talking about website, you'll also have to consider the support from various browsers. Like one of the main challenge of our ecosystem is that new technology comes, but the adoption is not that great, though that has improved in past many years. Currently, for images, WebP is the best option. And the main issues, like nowadays, images are not that big of an issue. Maybe it's GIFs. So I guess if you have question about images, you might also have GIFs. For GIFs, rather than loading GIFs, try to load videos which can be created in WebM extension. Those are lighter in size, thus making page load faster. Thanks.
Also
Just to
check
add
out
something to that.
images.guide. Yeah, sure, Sam.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Just one thing to add to that, Safari 14 adds WebP support. So, there's every reason to use WebP now. Just go for it, and you can use, source set and picture elements and all that for fallbacks. It's all there ready to go. Great support now. So WebP is definitely should be the first protocol for all images.
And also there are like tons of ways that you can manage your images on the website. For example, lazy loading them, deferring them to load, which are not directly in the viewport, optimizing them in different ways, or not only in terms of format. So I think, if I'm not wrong, Sam, you did talk about the Scoosh app, right? Which gives you different experiences of how you can optimize your images. But I would also like to add that you can go to images.guide website, which is written by Addy. It tells you in detail about the image optimization techniques, and it's simply awesome.
Thank you. I think CDNs are also a good way to load the images rather than actually keeping in assets file. So, yeah. So the next question is from Devi Prasad. What is the practical use of non-enumerable property? Yeah. So Dhruti, would you like to answer this question?
Yes, definitely. So, as we know, objects can store properties. Until now, a property was a simple key value pair to us, but an object property is actually a more flexible and powerful thing. So, object properties have three special attributes, or we can say flags. The first one is writable. If it is true, the value can be changed. Otherwise, it's read only. The second flag is enumerable, and if it is true, then listed in loops, otherwise not listed. And the last one is configurable, and if it is true, the property can be deleted, and this attribute can be modified, otherwise not. So in real life, there may be a requirement that we don't want to disclose the values of some properties like IDs that we are using for our processing purpose, not for the end user's purpose. So if we don't use this flag, then we manually have to write some if else block or for our logic. And if there is a requirement change to change the behavior of the functionality in future, then we need to update the block of the code as well. And if we use this enumerable flag, then we don't have to write manual if else block. And if there is a change in the requirement in future, at the same time also we just need to change at one place. So basically we can say that to follow the dry concept, that is, do not repeat yourself. So it's preferable to use the enumerable flag to make the property non-enumerable. I hope this makes sense, and thank you.
So thank you, Dhruti. Thank you for wonderful answer. And next question is by Amanding Singh, and that is, anyone has success integrated Lighthouse CI with GitHub Action to get Lighthouse score with every new PR. That is for Sam.
Yes. Now, one thing to mention with this is that we actually have LHCI on web.dev. I can't really share very easily the URL for the stuff in GitHub, but if you look at the repo for web.dev on GitHub, look in the actions directory in runs, you'll see an example there, and there's a workflow file in the .github directory there that shows how to do that. There's also some other stuff like third-party components that you can use. There's Lighthouse check and Lighthouse check action and so on. So yeah, it's definitely possible. And as you'll see, if you look at the web.dev repo, we're using it for web.dev.
Yep, that's great to know, Sam. So the next question is from Ujjwal Punia. How can we optimize WordPress websites with core web vitals where we are using plugins to improve website speed, and moreover we can't control the loading of scripts? I think this question is for Saurabh.
Sure. That's a good question. First of all, so I think when you work on something like WordPress, where you are dependent on a lot of different plugins, I think it's more like having a website with a lot of third-party scripts, which I think Sunit covered very well in his talk. And of course, like having your own website gives you the flexibility around controlling what you ship and what you don't. And at least you can reach out to those third parties individually as well to ask them to improve on few things. I think on similar grounds, first thing that I want to say is that for performing anything, there are more than one plugins available. And what you could possibly do is figure out which are those plugins which are more performance focused rather than the ones who are deteriorating your performance currently on the website. And I think if you are struggling to understand how can you do this, and if I'm not wrong, there is a Sitekit plugin by Google, which is now available for WordPress. You could install that in your website. It gives you it adds on a tons of capabilities which Google provides directly specifically for your site on WordPress. It talks about specific issues that you're facing. It potentially points you to the plugins that are causing issue, possibly tell you about the alternatives as well. I have not used it recently, so I'm not sure if those things, how evolved those things are, but certainly, definitely go for Sitekit by Google. And hope that answers. But yes, it can be a pain for sure. So I think you'll have to either reach out to the developer himself of the plugin to make sure that they are following or abiding by these rules, or find alternatives for the ones who are using it. If anyone wants to add anything from their personal experience, they can feel free to. Otherwise, yeah, let's move on.
Yeah. Just a big +1 to reaching out to the developers. Don't be shy about speaking to developers or plugins or whatever. And if you can show evidence that there's a slowdown coming from that, it's in their interest to fix those things, and they should want to do that. So definitely get in touch with developers of plugins or anything you think is slowing down your site.
And just take a minute, just because we brought this up about reaching out to developers. So a lot of new developers come out and reach out to us and ask, hey, I want to get started with open source contribution. How can I do that? I don't know GitHub yet. So I think even these kind of things, right, where you are directly raising some kind of questions or raising issues with the developers, that also counts for open source contribution. So that could be the first contribution that you're making for this community in the open source way. So don't be shy. Please reach out. The developers of these frameworks, of the plugins, everybody wants to understand how this impacts in the real world, and they want to make sure that more and more users use it if it's really useful.
Yeah, that's a really good point. There's like a fix beats an issue every time. So if you can contribute that to a plugin, even better than just raising the issue. But if you don't know how to fix it, then just get in touch.
Thanks, Saurabh. So now next question is also from Ujjwal Punia, and that is different tools measure speed of a website based on different factors. When we improve the speed for one, so it reduces for other. So on which tool we should rely? That is for, I think, Sunit.
Yeah, so this is a perfect question that even I had few months back. So the important thing is to understand these tools. Even with Lighthouse, the official documentation say that there is an inherent variance in the result of your tests. Now, this variance can occur because of many reasons. While you executed this test, was there something else going on that machine? The files that you were downloading, was there network latency? But if you're able to achieve a stable site, like I can give you an example. So LCP is one such metric which pushes you to achieve a stable performance on your site. For example, in Lighthouse V5, our score was 90, but when Lighthouse 6 came, our score was in like somewhere around 65. Why was that? That was because we were not prioritizing above the fold content on our homepage. Our homepage had multiple images, and we were loading many images, and those images, depending on the size, sometimes an image which was below the fold or was not the primary image would load before the primary image. So the answer to your question is try to achieve stable performance in your site, and you'll get consistent performance score across tools. That's my answer.
Can I add something here?
Yeah, sure, Saurabh, go ahead. I was just going to ask you that you and Sam might have something to add. So,
Yeah, Sam, do you want to go first?
No, I mean, I think that really covered it. I mean, I am aware of the problem. I know the problem from personal experience of getting these measures, and I understand it's tricky for people if you're working in a company where you begin to share metrics, and then those metrics become like work targets. That can be really tricky. And I mean, I think what we're trying to do with Web Vitals, like I say, is recognize that like I say, the web changes and the metrics may change, and it's difficult. But I think you do have to kind of bring in a culture where you use these numbers as tools, not as like objective final scores. They're not fixed, and you need to use the numbers as tools to really point to areas where you can make improvements, rather than that being simply like the target is just getting the good score. It should be there as a tool to find the places where your site can improve. But yeah, it's tough.
Cool. I think I just wanted to add one thing, which if you remember and go back to your school days, right? Or the ones when you used to write exams for CAT, for MBA, they used to say, hey, focus on the question and seek for the clarity. So I think one of the key factors which is missing from this question is, are we referring to different tools within Google or which are offered by Google, or are we talking about different tools which are available in the wild? For example, if I talk about GT metrics, which is again one of the tools which a lot of people use, one of the factors which they consider is the onload. How fast is onload happening? While when you talk about the tools which we offer, they focus primarily not on the onload, but TTI, for example, which can happen even after onload, right? So I think as far as Google tools are concerned, I totally agree with the question asker, the ones who Ujjwal, that it used to be based on different factors. But One good thing is that Google is putting a lot of effort in unifying those factors across the tools and making sure that all of them run with the same engine. However, again, talking about say something like say, and I talked this about this in my talk as well. When you're running web, say page speed insights. Now imagine if the lab test that the page speed insight is running, it's probably running on a server which is, for example, in US right now, but not in India. Now, if your website is hosted in India, in Mumbai, in one of those AWS or Google Cloud servers, then there would be added latency, and you would see certain extra lag or the increased LCP numbers and other kind of things, which will reduce a number. That's where, if you want to keep it consistent, I'd say yes, definitely look at PSI to understand how generally users are getting to see your website, but still use something like a web page test, which gives you the capability to choose the particular location where you want to run your test from, and then see if you're incrementally running it or not. And big plus one to what Sunit mentioned, if anyway you will have a good website, you will stop seeing a lot of variance anyway. So I hope that really answers.
Yeah, I mean, I think the core point is here to focus on, user metrics, real user metrics in the field. And, one of the points I think that the Web Vitals team has been making too is to think about the 75th percentile. Think about like not the average scores or the median scores, but, aim for a point where at least 75% of your page loads are getting good scores on those metrics. And that way you can, because you're using real user metrics, real user measurements, you can expect some consistency there rather than these problems. Yeah, like you're saying, Saurabh, of testing in the lab from different locations.
Yeah, thank you guys. Just to add, I mean, I have my own opinion that web is actually changing a lot faster than we expected. Now, if I go 10 years back, no one was talking about the web performance. Now it matters. So of course, your tools should also update, and the metrics as well. So let's go to the next question. Often people get confused with different scores, but I think this is the same question which was continued. And just like one tap sign up, which are the same. Okay, this looks a very big question. Just like one tap sign up, which are some more options techniques to create great mobile web experience, which is as close as possible to an app-like experience, which can eventually help drive more conversions. I mean, okay, I think it is like same continued question. I'm not sure. PWA, or I'm looking at some other slides.
No, I think that question, actually there can be a separate answer for that question, wherein we can particularly talk about Project Fugu. So I think which is a theme for day 3. So if you are interested in knowing more about it, definitely join us for day 3 and hear from the experts on how a Fugu project has helped them achieve or minimize the gap between native and web apps. So just like one tap sign up, there are a lot of new APIs. For example, SMS receiver API, which enables your website to also automatically read your SMS, just like your app. Or you have contact picker API, which enables you to pick up contacts directly from within your website and stuff like that. So I think a lot of those will be covered on day 3 and sign up. Sign up for that.
Thank you, Saurabh. Okay, so
yeah,
PWA.
Just one thing to add on that, as well as there's the capability aspect, but also the performance aspect. And just getting back to Web Vitals again, the kind of core concept there is responsiveness of getting that that really responsive feeling to your progressive web app, which is something I think that people need to focus on when they're building for the web, just like you'd hope for from a native app. So not just about capability, but also consider performance in your UX.
Okay, cool. So I think it was related to this question is related to PWA, progressive web, which delivers an app-like experience and in some time thought of as unnecessary investment if you already have an app. What's your take on that? I think this is a really good question. Why should we have an PWA if you already have an app with the same experience maybe? So anyone, I mean, this is open question. I think anyone can just take it. And
I can speak for ages on this thing, but I'll let others to talk about it first.
Yeah, anyone?
Well, okay, I'll jump in. I mean, the kind of obvious thing is like, where are your users? How are they finding you? What do they want from what do they want from you? How can you provide that service? Do people want to come to you via the web? Do people want to install your apps? What regions are people using your apps or your site from? Is it a more like site, like document reading experience, or is it more like a like an app-like experience? I mean, there are a lot of variables that go into this, yeah, I mean, there are. I mean, you can read the PWA documentation to find the the benefits of working with PWAs as opposed to apps, but it really depends on what you want from your experience and what your users want from you and where they find you. So I don't think there's one definite answer to this, to be honest.
Yep, I'd like to add a few things here. So I think of it from two angles. First, by having something like a PWA where you can improve the user experience on your website, you're opening another channel for users to interact with your business in an efficient way. And as I mentioned, I think briefly in my talk, if think of it this way, that your website is not the most famous website, or your business is not the most famous business on day one, and web is the first touch point for most of the businesses when they launch. People, even consider yourself, if you have to say buy on a new site, would you directly go and download the app? Some might, some are used to that feature, but most of you would still land onto the website, try to experience what exactly the site has to offer. And if you have a really good experience upfront on that website, it will help you in even assisted conversion later on. When I say assisted conversion, I mean, if I as a user is taking good positive vibe from your web experience, I'm more inclined to download your app later on, start using it, become more loyal customer. So I think that's where investing on PWA definitely makes sense, because even you can look at the Spotify case study, which is openly available now, wherein they didn't have any kind of experience on web for their music player, and they had lesser downloads. Later on, when they really gave that good PWA experience to the users, they saw a huge surge in the download. People started using Spotify a lot. So that tells you that.
So Saurabh, I'll also like to add one point. So you have to consider web is not just a conversion platform, but it's also for discovery of your platform or business. If you have a great website which even supports PWA, if the engagement of user is great over a PWA, the probability of them downloading or sticking with your business will increase. It doesn't matter whether user is using an app or a PWA. What matters is you are able to improve your business metrics. So think in terms of your business metrics.
Nice. So thank you all for the question answer. Now next, I think that is also common for all. Which vertical, e-com, travel, publisher, extractor, do you feel is the most impacted with the pure side experience, including bedside speed? Would be great if you could share some examples. So anyone want to take lead on this?
I think Suneet, you might answer this better because you belong to the same domain. So
Okay, so as per me, it's equal for all the domains. But if you're talking about publishers, let's say you're talking about static sites usually have better performance because they don't have too much JavaScript. But if they do, they'll also have that negative effect. For example, let's say if I want to read some articles and I go to the site and the article is not visible, the content is not visible, I'll probably bounce off and move on to some other site. So, like Saurabh, would you like to pitch in?
Yeah, I think it impacts each and everyone. Cake katega, sab mein batega. To be very honest, it impacts one and everyone. Just imagine, why would a particular segment be? Why would certain segment of people be okay with particular website? That okay, let it load slowly. So it impacts every vertical. I think.
Yeah, I mean, taking a positive spin on this, I mean, I would recommend having a look at some of the case studies on web fundamentals. So developers.google.com/web have a look at the case studies, and you'll see some really great positive examples from some all across different verticals where companies have improved the site experience, and from that, reduced abandonment, improved completions, conversions, and so on. And what you'll see there is it really cuts across different sites. One other thing I would say is, the old thing about what you can't measure, you can't improve. So I think inherent in this is finding those, whatever the word is, these kind of pinch points, So for example, for e-commerce, where are people abandoning the process of buying something from your site? Make sure you've got the analytics and the real user measurement on your site so that you can understand where those points are. I think that's the crucial part. And different verticals have different points at which they lose users or lose whatever a conversion means to you. Like that'll be different for different sites. But make sure that you measure the user experience and the user interactions on your site so that you can improve those figures.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Saurabh. Thank you, Sunit, for sharing your experience. I think that was the last question which we had, and we are done with the AMA. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to all the speakers who took time to actually give amazing contents to the Indian community. We'll be always grateful to you. And of course, the people who is sitting behind the scenes, our admins, our organizing team, they are like working like for 3 hours. So I think they deserve a clap. Everyone, please.
Yeah, yeah, good on you.
Yeah. So Tushar, you want to go ahead? Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much for giving us such very good session so hard, and we are looking forward to be more session in the next day and next day ahead, because there are lots of things, lots of tracks we are having, and definitely that would be the same experience which we will be having. So for everyone, feel free to give the feedback on goo.gle/webdev live India dash feedback, so that we will get to know what are the things which we can work on in the future. And definitely we are looking forward to you, and that's the great experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. I think that the day one was really wonderful, and we will come again with some wonderful contents on day 2. I have my favorite topic, Angular. You can see I'm wearing a Angular T-shirt, so I'm really excited to have Stephen Fluent talking about Angular, and then we have some amazing community members. So see you tomorrow. Please make sure that you are giving us feedback so we can improve, and we will come up with some amazing contents and in future as well. So thank you everyone. Have a good night and see you tomorrow.